Do you believe these things will be reversed should Joe Biden become the next president?
Maria, we're moving forward here at the White House under the assumption that there will be a second Trump term. I think it's really important to understand that what we seek here is verifiable ballots, certifiable ballots, and an investigation into what are growing numbers of allegations of fraud under signed affidavits by witnesses. And my own view, looking at this election, we have what appears in some sense to be an immaculate deception. But if you look statistically at what happened, clearly the president won this election and was leading on election day. And then after election day, somehow in these key battleground states, they got just enough votes to catch up to the president. That's kind of what is being investigated. So I think what's important here is that this is a country of laws and rules. We have a very clear set of election laws. And what we need to do is go through the process as we did with Gore, Bush v. Gore, and see where we get. So until we do that, our assumption is the second Trump term. We think he won that election. And any speculation about what Joe Biden might do, I think, is moot at this point.
So how long will this process take, Peter? We've been talking about the affidavits that I've been able to get my hands on. There's a whole host of affidavits I know that the Trump legal team has. They've spoken with a number of witnesses who have said, I saw voter fraud. What are your expectations and how long this takes to flow through the courts? And when we'll have a better idea of whether or not the legal system agrees with your notion?
This is clearly not my lane in terms of the granularity of the whole issue, but clearly there's going to be recounts in some states as required by law. There may be also contesting following those recounts. And clearly, based on the lawsuits that are being filed, there has to be investigations. I mean, some of these allegations are very, very troublesome. So I think it's important for this country, if we're going to go forward as a vibrant democracy, that we have free and fair elections that people have confidence in. And this election, unless we very carefully do go through this process and exhaust all remedies, we're going to lose that confidence. So this is a historic election. As the president says, let's see what happens.
All right. Peter, good to have you this morning. Thanks very much. We will certainly do that. We'll be watching. Peter Navarro.
So that was White House aide Peter Navarro on Fox Business this morning, basically lying through his teeth about the fact that supposedly there's an immaculate delusion, there's an immaculate deception to steal the election from Donald Trump and usher in Joe Biden's presidency, even though there's all of these hundreds, if not thousands, and tens of thousands of affidavits and examples of fraud that are out there still in front of the courts. That means that we can only assume there's going to be a second Trump administration. And so what he's saying is, look, we're not even, thinking about the possibility of Joe Biden being president right now in our operations at the White House and our operations at the federal government. We can only assume that in January, Donald Trump will remain president. And Fox News, as you see here, Fox Business, gives absolutely no pushback at all. Basically, they're playing along with it, saying, well, there's a lot of these affidavits. Maybe there really is something here. I wonder if, you have an update for us about how you plan to usher these, affidavits, these claims into actual actionable action at court to actually overturn some results. And of course, Navarro doesn't really say much in the way of anything substantive, but the claim is very clearly like, look, we got a lot of pots cooking right now, so stay tuned. Donald Trump is going to remain president, and Joe Biden is not president-elect, and all those sorts of claims. Look, I've been open about how I think this is a soft coup attempt by Trump, the Republican Party, his administration, and their allies. I don't think it's necessarily going to work, but even if it fails, and I do think it will, it's still poisoning democracy. It's still delegitimizing democracy for large swaths of the population that voted for the president. Not everyone that voted for Trump, but many who did will forever think now, because sources like Fox News, at least some people at the Fox network umbrella, and the president himself and his advisors and his family have been going around basically calling the election stolen and fraudulent, that 20-30% of Americans will forever believe that this was stolen, and that will be a millstone around the neck of American democracy for generations. Not even necessarily just for the next 20 years, but maybe for the next 40, 50, 60 years. Who knows? It's absolutely a travesty. And I'll tell you one thing. I don't want to give this too much credence here, besides the fact that this is clearly showing the Trump administration continuing to lie and Fox News, Fox Business actually helping them to amplify the lies. But look at this. I'm going to read you a court transcript and a tweet from a journalist about how when the chips are down in court, all of these claims of affidavits and fraud and evidence by Trump and his lawyers drifts away. That in public, they can say what they want. But in court, if you lie, that's a crime or that's a professional violation and you could lose your law license. So they're not actually lying in court to save their own butts. Look at this right here. This is a transcript from a recent court decision around Trump's fraud claims. The court says, "I understand. I am asking you a specific question and I am looking for a specific answer. Are you claiming that there is any fraud in connection with these 592 disputed ballots? To my knowledge at present, no," said Trump's lawyer. And then it follows. "Are you claiming that there is any undue or improper influence upon the elector with respect to these 592 ballots?" And then Trump's lawyer again says, "To my knowledge at present, no." And what that's telling you there is that, one, they're only talking about microscopic amounts of ballots in some cases, not enough to overturn even Georgia as the closest state, let alone states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, which have 50,000, maybe 100,000 and more ballots between Trump and Biden. But they can't lie. You can lie in the media way easier than you can lie in court. And these lawyers don't want to lose their careers, so they'll let Trump lie about stuff in public, but when they get into the actual court in front of a judge, then they have to admit they got nothing. Here's another tweet right here. "A Trump campaign attorney conceded in court in Arizona that he tried to enter hundreds of dodgy form-filled affidavits into evidence, even though their own investigation found that a subset of the sworn statements were filled with lies and quote-unquote spam." That they were, in essence, the Trump legal team, Trump's team, just getting mass-filled affidavits of anyone who maybe sort of possibly could have in some way saw something that may or may not have been fraudulent, or a ballot being tossed or a ballot being added or whatever. Anything. And they're throwing that in front of a judge to say, "Oh, Kayleigh McEnany with her 3 binders of affidavits." And then when they get to the judge is like, "Is any of this real?" And the lawyer's like, "Nah, probably not. At least a good chunk of it's actually actively fake." Because the lawyer at that point has to be honest. If he lies and says all of the stuff in these affidavits is rock solid truth and people are willing to give rock solid statements, supporting the veracity of those documents, he's going to find himself, in contempt or perjury or losing his law license or all three. So they have nothing. All they are doing right now is delaying the inevitable and poisoning democracy. And the scariest thing is that the next time a Republican narrowly loses an election, because this wasn't that close, they will try this again and they might succeed. This coup attempt has failed, but it may pave the path towards future coup attempts succeeding.